Hi Psych 3320 students. I want to take a moment to talk to you a little bit about correlations to make sure that you have everything you need for your proposal. A couple things to keep in mind while you're working on your proposal are some of the key concepts brought up in the chapter, things like sample and population. Always keep in mind when you're developing your proposal, the research you're going to conduct, what your population of interest is. Is it Americans, voting Americans? Is it individuals suffering from an eating disorder? Always keep in mind who your population is. Your sample recruitment, the sample of individuals who will actually participate in your research, needs to fully represent that population. For statistical reasons, we're able to make inferences back to the population of interest if we have a representative sample of that population. So think about that as you're working on your proposal. The other thing to keep in mind are the 4 ways to collect data: mail surveys, personal interviews, telephone interviews, internet surveys. How will data be collected? That's important as well, and you'll obviously mention that in the methods section of your proposal. Be sure to review the sample proposal that is available on our course content page under sample proposals. There's a correlation sample as well as an experimental sample. Remember, correlations simply look at the relationship between variables. So for instance, we're going to be working on questionnaires and surveys, particularly for this proposal. You may have an item with a Likert scale that ranges from 1 to 7. How attractive do you find this particular political candidate? 1 being not very attractive, 7 being very attractive. You would also have an item on there: how likely are you to vote for this candidate? 1, not very likely; 7, highly likely to vote for this particular candidate. Then we can look at the relationship between those items. Okay, when you start to place people into different conditions, some of you have emailed me about this. And keep in mind, when you start separating participants into different conditions where they're going to engage in different activities, you are now working on an experiment. That's important to keep in mind to make sure that you are not proposing an experimental design in this particular assignment. The second proposal will be based upon an experimental design, but this one we're looking at the relationship between variables. So the things we've just talked about, sample, population, how data will be collected, are really, really important. Also, measurement. How are you going to measure your variables of interest? You can make the items up for the questionnaire. I'm okay with that. Or you can find pre-existing measures. What has previous research used? You can use those. All right? But your design, the study, needs to be pushing the literature in a new realm. All right? Why is your study new? What is different about it? What hole in the literature is your particular idea going to fill? Okay, so your literature review for the correlation study can be used for your experimental study. I've had a couple emails about this as well. I'm not requiring you to do multiple literature reviews. In fact, I would prefer that you concentrate on the same literature, simply looking at 2 different designs here, right? Correlation design and experimental design. I know you can conduct literature reviews. I'm sure you've done it in several of your other psychology courses. If you've had courses with me, I know that you've done that in previous courses with me. But what I want you to focus on in this particular class is research designs, right? Our research designs. I want you to make sure that you grasp the difference between correlation designs and experimental designs, right? And the language we use in talking about what the results of these studies are different. Correlations simply look at the relationship between variables. What that means is we cannot make causal statements. However, in your experimental design, Proposal 2, you will be conducting an experimental design, which gives you the ability to say, to use cause and effect language. Okay, so some of the things I want you to keep in mind as you're working through the course material on correlations, correlation research, and experimental design, which we will actually get to in Chapter 6 after the midterm. All right, so for now, I want you to really, really focus on Chapters 1 through 5 for the midterm, obviously, and for your proposal, Chapter 5. Right, really focusing on that correlation material. Remember, if there's anything you want me to cover in these sort of mini podcasts or mini video casts, please let me know. I want to make sure that I cover things that I think students are having issues with. Right now, the only way I can do that is through email. I can look at some of the emails that I've received and realize that students seem to want more clarification, particularly this week on the assignment, and most of last week on the assignment of the first proposal. So if you email me in advance, I will be sure to cover some of these things in these little video lectures. Well, I hope this helps. I hope this helps narrow down exactly what I'm looking for, what's expected in a correlation proposal versus an experimental proposal. I look forward to reading your proposals.